Hello, everybody. Welcome to Between the Moment. We are back. My name is Diamond, and we are here to help you look for hope between all of life's moments. And today, we have another coffee conversation with the beautiful, lovely Miss Marley.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
I'm so glad you're here. Your fro makes me very happy.
Well, the weather just kind of keeps growing it day by day. As the humidity grows, the hair grows.
Well, the humidity is your friend.
Yes.
Thank you, Florida.
And this is like day 2, so day 3 and 4 will be even bigger.
Oh, yes. Yes. I love it. It's gorgeous. Well, Marley, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today. Throughout this season, we've just been talking about different areas of our life and thinking and redefining a lot of what we view specifically as women. I know we got our guy listeners out there. Thank you guys. But today we're going to talk about just a paradigm of service. Mm-hmm. And we know that womanhood and who we are as women we are just powerful, intricate creatures. We express ourselves very differently in our ethnicity, in our background, and what we can do, what we limit, what we unleash, all the different things. And I'm sure many women can attest to that. But giving back and serving intentionally in the world, I have heard very different and varying views on what that means for a woman. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of our conversation for today. So I kind of want to first let the listeners get to know who you are. So just give us a little spiel about yourself.
Okay. Well, you mentioned, my name is Marley. I'm originally from Connecticut, but I've been a Miamian for basically half my life. So I'm kind of between both the worlds, between both moments.
So, very nice.
Family background. Have a very Caribbean family. Parents are from Puerto Rico and Jamaica. But I'm very American in that sense. And I studied here in Miami, finance marketing. So I kind of do that now. Worked in corporate world for a while, and now I'm in real estate. And then just kind of on the, kind of church side, I have a passion as well for the church and women in church and service in that sense. And so I have a podcast called the Bold Faith Podcast, which focuses on engaging the culture and equipping the church. And so we, engage the cultural topics from a biblical worldview, and really with a lean towards apologetics.
Oh, I love that. Mm-hmm. Well, we had a fun car ride on an adventure we did recently.
Yes.
In April. We were just helping out with something going on at our church. And I just had such a good time hearing how you thought. It was just simple things. We were walking through the store, I think, looking for hamburger buns.
Looking for hamburger.
If I saw another hamburger bun after April, I was going to lose my mind. Well, we got it. We did it.
3 different stores?
Yes.
To find them all.
Well, we did it. We did it. We found it. But yeah, just your views and the way that both you carry and present yourself is just very refreshing. I even told my daughter you were coming over. She goes, "Really?
Yeah.
She's coming?" So I'm excited to start this conversation with you. So with just where you kind of shared a little bit about yourself, how did you view service and community? And you can feel free to define that, break that down, whatever, but just talk to us a little bit about that.
Growing up, my mom was kind of the matriarch of her family. She's one of 12.
Wow.
But she was the one who hosted family dinners, and every holiday was at her house. And so, growing up, she was the one who, if somebody needed something, she was the one who was leaving at midnight to go provide it for them. And so I always thought of service of kind of just giving yourself to the very end.
Yeah.
And Though I think that's in itself is good to have that heart to want to give and to share yourself and to meet other people's needs. The other part of it is having service with boundaries in that sense too. So just kind of growing up, having that, that example, I think was a beautiful thing. I think service in general is actively meeting the needs of your community. And specifically within the church, when you meet the needs, you do that in a way that you are best able to use the gifts and resources and talents that God's given you. And so I think when we think about serving, usually we think about service tied to ministry.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what did you sign up for? You know?
Right.
And that's kind of how the paradigm I always had it for a very long time.
Did you grow up in church?
So I grew up-ish in church. My family was like Catholic growing up, like very young.
Yeah.
And then they kind of converted to Pentecostal, Protestantism when I was like in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I really saw like my parents' faith, in action. Right. So grew up in a very Latin Pentecostal church, and tambourine yell and everything. Okay.
Full expression. Let it out.
Yeah. And then, kind of came to my own sense of faith, after college, felt like I had an encounter with Christ, and, things changed probably when I was like about 24. And kind of just went all in, I think, for God at that point, in terms of having a passion for the word and wanting to study and wanting to learn and read the Bible. And to that point, some people's faith is like connected, I think, in church. You're either, I forgot the term it's used, but basically either service kind of drives your faith, or faith will drive you to serve.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think either is fine. You just kind of have to know where you're at to be able to make sure you're engaged properly.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one of those people who like service kind of drives my faith and drives my knowledge. And so like when I'm more actively engaged, like it tends to make me want to like read more and be more active and ask the questions. And so I think just kind of knowing that about yourself, I think is good. But in a general sense, my family, grew up just serving our family.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So everything was very tied to like family and like kind of local church. And so now when I hear people like, when we're like, oh, can you do this? I'm like, yeah. And other people are like, why are you going to go do that? I'm like, I'm able. Like,
right. Yeah.
I'm able. Like, I'm free. Yeah. Like I know I don't have to, but like, I don't know, they need something. If I'm able to meet it, like, why wouldn't I just do that? And like I said before, that can kind of get you into trouble sometimes when it's just like you overextend yourself. Mm-hmm. But I think to at least have that heart is like service is tied to like kind of giving and thinking more of others in that moment,
I love what you just said about how service can drive your faith, or faith can drive your service. That's a big paradigm to even just figure out for yourself. As you said it, I was like, let me think.
Like, well, because you can like, like, and when I mean in the faith, I mean like even in the academic sense, like some people like won't get involved in any ministry because they don't understand like what it's for. Right. And they're like, well, I don't know, I'm here at church. Like, what does that verse mean? Or, and then that being more clear, in terms of maybe there's some of the questions being answered, having a desire to read and know, the word and get involved. Like that is what drives your involvement of being like, oh, if that's what that means, maybe I should join something, and other people are like, I think just have a natural affinity to like want to be around people and help and like are kind of a tangible learner versus let's say audible or visual learner. And so when they do that and they realize, oh,
it's like putting like almost making it real, like something
it's
3D.
Making it real. Yeah. When you're just like, oh, this is what the church does. Like, oh, we meet people's needs this way. Like, oh, you guys need help that way. Why is that? Like, oh, because Jesus says that we should, help one another and we should love one another. And what does that mean? And, so that drives to like you to go and research more into the Bible and the scriptures and things like that. So I just think knowing kind of who you are just kind of helps you serve better.
Yeah. And the overall stance, I know one thing I've heard at the Brook, the church where we go to here in Miami, it said service forms you and you're formed as you serve. So it's kind of that same paradigm, but I just love the juxtaposition there because it makes you look at, kind of yourself in the mirror. That's so good.
And when you feel like disconnected or you feel like you're stuck in your faith a little bit, you're like, okay, is it because I'm not in my word or is it because I'm not serving where I feel like I'm placed? And usually when you can like figure that out, it will drive both. You know what I mean? Like you have to have both, but like you typically one I feel like drives the other.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you define the community around you? So if, I know some of our listeners are believers, others are seeking, but just for clarity, as a believer in Jesus, if you are saying, I live in community, is that the same thing as I'm serving my community? Would you delineate those? What would you say?
I mean, I think they can be the same. They typically aren't. I mean, when you're talking about, I usually do think people put brackets on like, this is my church community or my church family. And this is like maybe my natural family, my work family, like, or your work community. Like, I think you have different buckets of community. And I think that's fine. I probably think that's actually a good thing, because if you only ever hang out with church people, like, who are you talking to? Who are you evangelizing? Who are you reaching out to? But that being said, I think the Bible is pretty clear that like your first community is to your own family, like within your own household. And then next is to, your local church and meeting those needs. And then, with whatever resources or gifts or, talents you have, then you branch out from there, socially in your own, city, socially in your own state. If you're somebody who has the gift to go speak to other, people in other nations, like, I think that's where it kind of grows from. And so having that in mind, that if your first community is your family, not everybody in your family might be saved. You know what I mean? So it's hard to be like, oh, your church family is the top, because technically it's not, in one sense. Right. So I think it's okay to have different buckets. I think it's natural. And I just think we need to keep it like in perspective. Yeah. Right.
And then also looking at proximity. Like, I've lived not in the same state with my family of origin. Oh, Lord. It was almost 18 years. Yeah. 18. So like wanting to go and physically serve them. Many of them are believers, but some aren't. I literally can't do that daily. So it is sometimes a yearly or a monthly through virtually thing.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think we think service has to be hands-on.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's been hard too, because I've been away. I'm like the only one here. All my family is all over the place, but mainly up in, kind of the Northeast, different parts of Florida. But serving your family looks differently over time too. Like, the way you serve your parents when you're younger is to obey. I mean, you're always supposed to honor and obey them, but like in a very like direct, like, I tell you to do this, you do it. Why are you questioning? I said to do it. That's okay.
Oh, I like this part.
Because I said so. You know what I mean? Right. Like, okay, that's how I serve them. And then is honor them. And how they serve you, right? Is like by providing and things like that. That doesn't look like that when you're 37, like I am. Yeah. You know what I mean? It looks like calling your parents once a week and make sure you check up on them. Are you guys okay? Like, checking on health. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm praying for them always, but serving your family is going to look different in different parts of your life.
Yeah, for sure. And the paradigm of serving, you said it earlier, where you said starting here with the family and then you continue to talk about the different spheres. I think that gets lost. Yeah. Just where you are. So for the young college student in her dorm, then it starts with where she is in her dorm. You're the young professional who is in a community but doesn't have a roommate, who is in her constant vicinity. Right. Like, thinking about that paradigm as, no, this is not if I want a paradigm to serve, it's that I need one. And then how does it flesh itself out? I think, at least in my experience, I'll speak for myself. I think what I've noticed is the grand polar opposite. You also alluded to this as well, of not being able to say no and then making your no like never. Like,
that's true.
And then the boundaries, but then you just completely throw away the entire paradigm. So I'm like, I'm not going to have a paradigm of service. It's if I have leftovers, it's kind of like thinking like true. That versus no, like, this is at a core of who I am. My God gave himself. I was reading Philippians this morning. I was just like, Jesus, I'm confused about having all power and just laying that down. I don't understand that. I really cannot comprehend that. Like, that type of service, to have it all and then to lay it down, to be wrapped in flesh and to be
empty yourself.
Like, what? Like, no, I want it all. Like, Super Saiyan. Like,
well, because usually it's like, serve me.
Yeah.
No, I don't need it. He came to serve and, seek the lost. But like, we have a paradigm of usually of like, well, I'll serve you if you serve me.
Right.
And that's the complete opposite of what the gospel calls us to do. You know what I mean? Like, he came to serve us when we couldn't do anything for him. And so I think, to your point, like, sometimes you kind of get burned about feeling like, okay, I have to say no. And I think it's healthy to set boundaries. Yeah. Please don't get me wrong. But it's also like, you can't come from this place of like, A, I'm only going to serve you if you're going to serve me, or B, like, oh, if I have leftovers. Because I think service is supposed to be part of who you are and like your everyday walk. It's just going to look differently at different parts of your life.
For sure. Okay. You said burn. So is there a time that you have felt burned in service, and how did you start again?
Yes, it happens, especially if you are. I'm just gonna keep this like in a church kind of context, especially in family. Honestly, you get burned first probably by family, honestly,
Sadly,
because it's typically the same people that are coming back to you to ask you to help them or, quote unquote, serve them.
Yeah.
And typically it's not serving them. What they think they're asking for is not actually serving them well.
It's enabling.
It's enabling, right?
Yeah.
And so serving them well might be saying no. And that's hard to learn after time. And so you can get burned by just continuing to give when you should have said no.
Yeah.
And then in ministry work, like, it just is what it is. Like 10% of the people or 20% of the people do all the work.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that position of especially somebody like me who like I said, I'm one of the people who like needs to serve in order to like feel like I'm building my faith, and not in a works righteousness kind of sense, just in a like I'm a hands-on kind of person, and I just like people. I like hate I get my energy. I'm extrovert. I get my energy from people and situations and social gatherings, things like that. So I'm the first one to be like, yeah, I'll sign up. Like as long as I feel like I can take on the task, right? So the reality is that in ministry and in most things, whether it's work, friends, whatever, about 10 to 20% of the people will end up doing 80% of the work. Yeah. Right. And so you can just get burned out in terms of just the load of work, or because if you're faithful, right, or if you do something well, people are going to come back to you to keep doing it. Right. And it's sometimes you want to be like, oh, no, I was just kidding. Like, I just wanted to do that one thing. Right. But then you're also like, well, I mean, I'm able, I can do it. Like, and somebody that I'll use me as an example, like, I don't have kids, I'm not married. So typically I have more time in some sense. Yeah. And so I think people are like, well, can't you just take it on? I'm like, well, no, because I have a life. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not fair either. Right. And so you have to create those boundaries, but in terms of being burned. Yeah. So you can be burned just in terms of the workload, and you can be burned in terms of feeling like, wait, if I'm doing all this, like, why isn't everybody else doing this too? Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then you have to realize like, okay, this isn't everybody's calling, and not everybody's gifted in this manner. And maybe for this season, like, you need to take on this load. And at that point, you kind of reassess, your boundaries. Yeah. And then you started to, you alluded even to the stage of life, making, yes, there's some realities categorically. We know, yes, if you have kids, you don't, yes, and all the things. However, if person A has the same exact weight, situation, whatever, over here, it doesn't mean that they're experiencing it the exact same way. That's not fair. Right. And I am a stickler for creating hierarchy of stage of life. Like singleness is not less than marriage, and marriage is not better or less, or it's not. It is very different. They're just different. Yes, they're expressions of God and His love and His community, our identity, the whole gamut of it. However, it still warrants you being able to, like you say, to say no. Right. Like, to say no. And then to turn around and say yes again as the seasons change. Yeah. So the yes part of being able to like say yes again, I think you just, whenever I feel burned, I just kind of like take a step back from whatever it is, like make sure, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted and whatever I'm doing. And kind of wrap up whatever that project is, and then just reevaluate, like just take a moment, a month or a week, whatever it is, and reevaluate like, okay, am I doing this because I feel like I'm in the season called to do this, and it's just going to be difficult and it is what it is? Or am I just doing it because there's nobody else who wants to do it or can do it? Yeah. And it's like, if that's the case, like maybe it just needs to be let go. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if nobody can do it, well, and you don't feel like it's part of your gifting right now or your season, like that's okay. Yeah. Or the genius question that God always asks us to ask Him: what will you have for me in this season? It's like, why don't we ask that question? Right. It's like, Lord, is this where you have me? And sometimes the answer isn't very clean and cut and dry for that time, but asking the question so you're constantly looking for that, but still not moving the paradigm of service. And I think that that's the conversation that I've had a lot with women, is wanting to remove the paradigm of service as their seasons are unexpected. And it's like, that's not what God has called you to do. It shifts because back to that faith and serving dynamic, like they go hand in hand.
it just brings teeth, feet, all the different limbs and body parts I can't think of right now. Like it just makes them 3D. It really, really does.
Things that you might be passionate to serve with or serve for, that's not everybody.
Right.
And so it's hard sometimes to feel like everybody should be like on the same wavelength and have the same, the same passion for whatever it is that you feel like you're called to, and they don't. And you just have to like take a pause again, right? And say, okay, this is fine. That not everybody's going to feel the same way you feel about it. And to be able to give people options to serve in their strengths has been like a way to like recalibrate to say everybody can't serve this way, the way you serve, Marley. But like if you give people, because people think like, well, that's the only way I can serve in that ministry. Right. Is if I do X, Y, and Z and I can't do that.
Everybody's singing.
Yeah. Right. Like there might be a way to serve in the music ministry, even if you don't sing. Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so presenting those options to people, like I think I've told you that I have, I work with our volunteer servant ministry. We help abortion-minded women and families, and we help them in whatever it is that they need at that time. Whether it's going out to speak to women at the clinic to get them not to do the abortion, and to let them know that there are helping resources and other choices for them. Or whether it's people who are there who just need help, like, oh no, I'm keeping my baby, I just need some help. Okay, great. How can we help you and gift you? How can we serve you in this moment, right? And everybody thinks it's just like going to the clinic. It's like, no, if that's not, trust me, if you're not gifted for that or called to do that, don't go out there.
It is a specific space.
Yeah, for sure. It's a specific space. But if you do have the time to go out there, like, can you pray for people while they're out there, right? Like, are you able to, if you have extra money, are you able to like serve the women who, in terms of your resources, by gifting them any of the items that they might need, during pregnancy or after with their children? Do you, are you a business owner? And a lot of times, I see a lot of like young couples go, and the men are like, I can't afford to have another kid. And it's like, are you a business owner that can, and a lot of times it's like, they're not in position. They're not in school. They didn't finish school. They have a record. Yeah. Hey, are you a business owner that can employ young men? You know what I mean? Like, how can you serve this family in a way that will help them retain their family? You know what I mean? Like, do you have, 2 hours a month to babysit? Yeah. If they have, you know what I mean? If they need to go and take a class.
Or basic skills like how to write a resume or like application or whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Like, I think we need to kind of think outside of the box of how we can serve certain communities without thinking that it has to always be in person, hands-on, or financially. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's usually what's kind of thrown to us. And so, because I know people don't have either the time or the passion that I have for the ministry, I feel like being able to present those other ways to help and serve, like that's what kind of keeps people engaged.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I saw this one curl just continually to move because I could feel the passion just coming through. And it goes back to the core of this that I really want listeners to walk away with, and viewers, is that if you have that paradigm, and as life unfolds and those passions just are so clear as they present themselves, there is a way to, one, keep asking God, like, how can I serve that it aren't blah, 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 blah because of this season? Or how can I serve in spite of blah, 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 knowing that it has to be some type of sacrifice. Right. It's starting with that core that it must be. Yeah. It must be. And then just building that out.
Yeah. And service often does look like sacrifice. Oh, yeah. And we are very self-serving people sometimes. And
that was nicely said. That was cute.
Self-serving. That was cute. And when, like we just said, God emptied himself. Like he came down, made himself lower than the angels, like to serve people who were in rebellion. Like while we were yet sinners, he still loved us and he died for us in that moment. Yeah. And so I think a lot of us want to be like, it wants to be like this very like glamorous service. And it's like, no, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you're giving money that you feel like you don't have. Sometimes you're, overextending yourself for a season. Sometimes serving does look like sacrifice. You know what I mean? Very often it looks like sacrifice if it's true service, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah. And we don't want to like think that, you know what I mean? Like being in media, I'm like, waking up every Sunday to serve and giving up every single of your Sunday, even though Sunday's for the Lord. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's different.
People who just go on Sundays, like if they want to go, they go. If they don't, they don't.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's different to have to be there.
Yeah.
As, you know, a pastor's wife and have to be there.
Yeah.
You know, there is no like day off for that when you don't feel like it. And so in that sense, like, I just think that like you said, the kind of paradigm shift around service, it is very uniquely tied to sacrifice. And because I think we live in a culture that is very self-serving in the negative sense of the way, you know, it's hard to get, you know, the other 80% involved. But, you know, I think everybody clearly, especially in the body, like is called to serve in their own capacity.
Yeah.
And so I just think making space for people to realize like where they are, helping them find their gifts, you know, flesh those out, is kind of where we come in.
Yeah, for sure. And that service can be another beacon to finding hope between a moment. So the whole premise between the moment is literally if you're standing in a grocery line and you just get a phone call. I actually got a phone call today about another death in my family after a death last week. And I'm like, what? So from that moment to the next, sometimes the service is the thing that propels you to hope.
Oh, 100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that is the whole focus for wanting that paradigm shift to be such a crucial thing in our viewers and listeners and my life too. It's not like, you know, these conversations are mirror reflective conversations as well. So, but thank you.
When people get like engaged and like you said, if you feel like you're down or you feel like you need to get reinvigorated for whatever it is, it's usually one of those moments that you take a break and then you're like, you get right back to it. You know, that's going to propel you forward. Yeah. So that's usually the encouragement to like, just do it. It's Nike. Just do it.
right.
Like, and take a beat, you know, take a beat if you need to. But that doesn't mean just like stop.
Right. Yeah. Right, and removing it. Usually I do this grand spiel about mindful momentums and how we need to pause, then move. But again, another episode we've had this season where you probably need to go back and rewind and listen to it again, just to really reevaluate your own life and to see, all right, what is my paradigm for serving? And I know I'm going to ask myself that question. And yes, I'm a pastor's wife. Yes, done other things. Yes, all the things. But that should not stop. It better not stop anyone from reevaluating that question. In Galatians 5:13, when we moved to Miami, that was my scripture. It's like, I do not want to use the freedom that God has given me for just myself. It is for service. And that sounds like, but better why? When I'm thinking about, you know, my new mommy brain at that time, but it really is, God is like leading us in deeper trust and life with him. So it's just
because the paradigm should always refocus or recenter back on Christ, right? Like I know I said like, okay, your community starts with your family and then it kind of branches out, but it's also like the center of that, even prior to that, is your relationship with God,
for
right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so like that's how you refocus or recenter like your mindset really about how and where to serve and what service looks like.
Yes. Help us, Lord. Help us, Lord. Well, Marley, thank you so much for being here. This is such a good conversation. A Bold Faith, correct?
Yes. At Bold Faith Pod, on all the social media handles, podcast, all that. Like I said, we focused on equipping the church to engage culture. So we have a very kind of focus on the apologetic side and looking at cultural issues from a biblical worldview. And a lot of it definitely, you know, is focused on the kind of the abolition of abortion movement. But we definitely branch out from there. Anything that's kind of connected to family and womanhood and, you know, anything that's kind of affected by that issue.
That's good stuff. If you didn't get any of that, it's okay. You can rewind, go to the show notes, all the things. Of course, please check us out on IG, Diamond U. Click subscribe if you're on YouTube, all the platforms for the podcast. Thank you so much for being a part. And thank you again, Mark.
Thank you for having me.